In less than 12 hours, the second round of Democratic primary debates will be underway. Plenty of us have been anticipating some of these matchups, including Elizabeth Warren on the stage with Bernie Sanders, as well as Montana Governor Steve Bullock's first debate appearance. And tomorrow night, all eyes will, of course, be on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's rematch, with candidates like Julian Castro, Cory Booker looking to gain attention bumps as to repeat their last performances.
Medicare for all, climate change, gun control, foreign policy, and immigration, all possible debate topics, of course. A few things we know for sure. There will be no opening or closing statements and no questions requiring the raising of hands. Interesting. Here to share her theories on what might lie ahead in this debate round is Emma Vigeland. She's a correspondent and producer for the Young Turks Rebel HQ. Friend of the show. Great to see you, lady.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
All right.
Great to see you
too. So just for the first night, what do you think is going to happen today?
Yeah, so I mean, there's been a lot of talk about whether or not Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are going to go after each other, and I don't anticipate that they will, because it's not smart to. The differences between them are really foreign policy. Bernie Sanders has a better record on foreign policy. Amongst other things, Bernie is more vociferously in favor of Medicare for all. Elizabeth Warren, despite raising her hand in the last debate, has sort of wavered on that. But I think the biggest difference between them is that Bernie is a populist leader, where Elizabeth Warren is kind of leaning into more of the wonky elements of progressivism, and I think the populism has more staying power. But again, these are differences that are going to be delineated later in the process. Right now, they're not going to go after each other because, one, they're friends, the personal relationship the media likes to talk about, but two, it's not smart to, because they need to pick off the more establishment candidates before they start getting into those differences.
Here's something I've always wanted to get in with the actual progressives is, in deciding between Bernie and Warren, it seems very difficult, because I saw this with Trump, which is Trump was the pure populist id, but he came in and he frankly wasn't able to do pretty much anything about what he actually ran on.
Right.
Do you worry that that might be the same case with Bernie? Because Warren would be a great executor of policy, but she may not necessarily is the person who could get elected in order to execute that. I think it might be vice versa with Bernie. I'd just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I would say that the differences between Trump and Bernie on this front is that Bernie's policies are actually very popular. So the people power behind him wouldn't just be this 33 to 40% of hardcore supporters in the conservative movement, but it would be people behind Medicare for all, that 70+% who are in favor of it, of the Green New Deal, of raising the minimum wage, of ending the wars, etc. These would be popular proposals. So Bernie Sanders' implementation of them would be more pushed by actual people behind it, as opposed to Trump's kind of faux populism and racist rhetoric, which really resonates with his base, but doesn't have a broad coalition of support, because economic policy is what drives Bernie.
I think that's right. I also think, I mean, look, it's remarkable that Sanders is still able to be a sort of anti-establishment. I mean, he very much has intentionally refused to join the Democratic Party as a senator, right? He's managed to maintain his outsider status, but we shouldn't forget he's been in government a long time. So it's not like he doesn't know how this thing works, whereas Trump really didn't know anything about how to pull the levers of power within Washington. I also think, just myself, the difference between Sanders and Warren, while Warren has been effective in getting her ideas pushed through the system as it exists now, I think things have changed and broken to the point that that dynamic of being able to go in and work with people and sort of work within the established system just isn't going to be effective. You have to have, as you said, that sort of people-powered movement, putting pressure on the system and doing something completely different in order to actually get anything done. So in my mind, that's kind of the most significant difference between the two.
Yeah, I would agree with you. But I think what's going to be really interesting is how much these two stand out as the better, in my view, candidates when they're on stage with everyone else tomorrow.
Right.
So Beto O'Rourke's lack of policy substance and kind of watered down attitude is going to look even worse than he did in the first debate, when I would say he was the biggest loser of both nights, even more than Joe Biden. And then also, I think who I'm going to be thinking about during this debate is Kamala Harris for the next night, because she really had a lucky draw going on night number 2, where she's not going to be on stage with Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, who would be starker contrast against her now new proposed Medicare for all with private insurers with a 10-year phase-in. It's completely incrementalist and not at all what she said she was actually for when she signed on as a co-sponsor for Bernie Sanders' Medicare for all bill. So she actually got a very lucky draw by not being on the stage. So I'm going to be thinking about how easy she's going to have it on Wednesday.
So when we had Cenk on, he said, I wish that Bernie would fight. And actually, I kind of wish the same thing, which is how is she not being just totally ridiculed for flipping on Medicare for all, and so many of the other candidates grifting onto his signature campaign proposal, but then adding these tweaks which are basically render the entire policy useless and fake.
Cenk thought that Bernie should fight?
Yeah.
That's so out of character. Yeah, but I would agree in the sense that I think that he's allowing a lot of his differences to be co-opted by these candidates who just kind of want to glom on, and I'm not going to say be parasitic, but just kind of take a lot of what he actually proposed and take it as their own.
Yeah.
But I think, Bernie is very conscious of the fact that there's a significant part of the Democratic electorate that sees him as an old white man, and he does not want to look sexist as he was painted in 2016. Whatever he did, that's what he was painted as by the Hillary Clinton campaign and by those surrogates in this very disingenuous way.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. And I was pointing out legitimate policy differences.
I think he sees Biden as the real sort of contender.
The big fish.
Yeah, and also I think, they share a much similar coalition of support.
Right.
Versus Kamala support, Elizabeth Warren support, Buttigieg's support. They're sort of over in a different pool. So it doesn't benefit him that much to go after those other candidates. In fact, it could be counterproductive. Looking forward to the night with Biden and Harris and Booker. Biden's going to be on stage with every candidate of color who is in the contest. How do you think that dynamic is going to play out? Do you think he's going to suffer more blows like he did in the first debate?
I think he has to, because he has no answer.
Yeah.
So unlike Bernie Sanders, where those attacks are completely smears, honestly, because there have been very few politicians who have been as supportive of people of color and of women than Bernie Sanders in his multi-decade career. Biden's record is actually problematic. So what are his answers except to be arrogant and just kind of blow things off in a Trumpian way? Democratic voters don't respond to this kind of chest puffing that the Republican Party voters do. The kind of authoritarianism that Trump was able to get away with when he just blew past all of the policy discussions about when it came to him. But Biden, I think, is displaying a similar kind of arrogance, and I think that it's not going to resonate as well with voters as it did with Republicans with Trump.
That's one thing I wonder with Biden is he truly doesn't realize he was wrong. And that is something that is truly shocking.
He's authentically wrong.
Yeah, he's very authentically wrong. And it seems like his mind really can't be changed. He's being dragged along, and I don't think he actually believes in these things on the Hyde Amendment or climate change or whatever, and I don't think he would actually govern that way if he was elected. And I guess, look, I know where the progressive base stands on this, but how is it trying to communicate that to these voters who seem to trust him so far?
I think that it's been harder than I thought. So I thought that his entire base of support would pretty much evaporate months after he announced his candidacy, and it has not happened that way. I think the polling's inflated, but I also think that there are a lot of people that want to vote for him because basically based on these two things. One, they think that he's associated with the Obama administration and good times, but two, this electability conversation, which we cannot seem to shake. That Bernie Sanders is unelectable, Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, I think there's a better case, by the way, in the Midwest, but that they're unelectable and that Biden is. And so people want to defeat Trump so badly that this talking point is unable to be burst. And I think that that's really what's keeping him in the race and keeping him in this lead.
Yeah, it's interesting because poll after poll, basically Biden and Bernie both beat Trump.
Right.
Nationally and in the Midwest, right? In almost every poll, that's the case. And yet people just have as like an article of faith that Bernie will lose.
I think it's everything that we were taught in civics class, right? So there's the right and the left, and the center is where it's at, and that's how you're going to win, and that's how politics works, but that's not how it is. We've seen time and time again that populism is what wins over the Midwest, what wins over these areas, what you're going to do for them on a day-to-day level, economically, how you're going to affect their jobs, etc. So I really do feel like people are just stuck in this old-time paradigm, and it's reinforced time and time again by the media that despises Bernie Sanders. So I think that's really why people are just still in this old way of thinking.
Yeah. Well,
Emma, great to see you.
Yeah,
Always
great to
have
see
your
you.
Thank you, Emma.
perspective on
Thanks
the show.
so
We
much.
appreciate
appreciate it.
A new Hill TV HarrisX poll asks a pointed question. Do the candidates in the field share your values? That is coming up, as well as some more debate night predictions.
And we've heard a fair amount about healthcare from the debate stage and the campaign trail, but what about trade and other topics that voters may actually want a candidate's take on? Team Rising is next. We're going to ask what they think when Rising continues.